Via the Grapevine, offering you the chance to learn more about wine, the masters behind them, and even which wines to collect. As you may have already heard in the wine media, the legendary Caroline's Fine Wine Cellar has moved to Sea Point after 24 years of purveying fine wines from the original shop in Strand Street. And it's a big move from one of the giants of the South African wine industry. So to find out why and what we can expect from the new store, I thought, let's get founder Caroline Rilema on the line, and she joins me now. Welcome, Caroline. Did I get your surname pronunciation correctly?
It's actually Rilema.
Rilema. There we go. Forevermore, I shall know. Because we don't know your surname. It's always Caroline of Caroline's Fine Wines, isn't it?
Good morning, Guy.
Caroline, I'm looking forward to giving my guests the opportunity to learn more about you personally and your interest in wine with this chat. But let's get straight to the news first. Why have you moved from Strand Street to Sea Point?
Well, before COVID struck, the CBD had already started to decline in a way. It really turned around by the CCID precinct project way back with Michael Farr in about 1998, and it became a wonderful place to be. And then we went through about 15, 20 years and it started to decline again. But we were locked into a 10-year lease, so we had to stay there and sit it out. Next month we will be free of our lease. So we started to look around. But when COVID struck, the business blocks were, they became like morgues. Hardly anybody was in them. The tourists stopped coming, and the walk-ins through the door went from about 40 people a day to 1 or 2 a day if we were lucky. So we just had to sit tight and do our best, and we worked on online sales, and that's it. And now we just can't wait to move out.
I was just going to say it's sad in a way, but it sounds like maybe also a bit of a relief for you.
Yes, absolutely, it really is. And I do believe that Sea Point has turned into the new CBD. There are lots of office blocks. They are all populated. We walked around up and down the streets of Greenpoint, Sea Point, all over on different days of the week whenever we could, my partner and I. And every single residential block is newly painted, beautifully looked after, lovely gardens. And you can see that everybody's there, they're paying their levies, and it's a lovely place to live. And we are expecting those customers to frequent our shop.
Because your new shop, of course, located at the Regent, 33 Regent Road, right opposite the Mojo Market. So you obviously saw a great synergy between the market and yourself.
Yes. Well, we spoke to a lot of our reps who come and sell wine to us. And all of them said, you must be rather in Regent Road, which my partner and I had already identified, and as close to the Mojo Market as possible. And we've been in there, we've bought a couple of street food thingies, and it's a very vibrant, lovely place. I don't know the exact target market there yet. I think a few more visits will give us an idea.
And in terms of this new store, what day exactly, or what date is it scheduled to open? And what can we expect? Will it still be a veritable library of world wines, or have you had to slim down the offering somewhat?
Regarding the opening, we're hoping that our license transfer will come through by Friday. And we really, really hope that we can start trading on that day. Otherwise, I think the latest will be Wednesday next week, but it is imminent, we've been assured.
So that's 8th December next week.
Yeah. And then stock-wise, we have enough space to carry, 54 Sauvignons, 54 Chardonnays, 54 Chenin's, and in every varietal category, we've got space for sort of 54 in each section. So it's going to be a large selection of local wines. And then on the gondolas down the middle, we will always carry the traditional great wines from the proper regions of Europe, like the Loire Valley, the Rhone, Bordeaux, Spain, Italy, etc. And we handpick the best at the best price in all the price categories.
You've got a massive international client base, and I imagine you've had to send them all a notification to say, hey, we're moving, find us at this address. How's the response been from them?
That's, I can't say yet. Because now we thought everybody would be coming, you know, all our lovely Swedish, German, Swiss, French guests, and the Brazilians too. They're great customers. And now we don't know what's going to happen. But if all things go back to normal, the new normal, we will send out a mailer to everybody on our database. We've got about 6,000 people, and they'll all know where we are. And I think they'll be very happy that we are where we have set up new shop.
Caroline, will you still be offering in-store tutorial tastings like you did before at the Strand Street premises?
No, it's just too narrow. We're not going to have space to set up tables, I don't think. But we'll once we're in, we'll organize something. We might do much smaller groups, sort of 10 people at a time, in which case we will be able to do it. In Tokai, we will be doing every second Wednesday. Those go down very, very well.
Well, the nice thing is, you're opposite the market. You could get a little stolity there and do tastings there. And when people say we want to buy, say, cross the road, you'll find us there. So you don't need to do it in store. You're opening yourself up, freeing yourself.
Yeah,
now.
Good idea.
So we can still expect a wide range of fine wines from around the world and across South Africa. Tell us about some of the more special international wines we can find in your store, because I believe you have a Spanish wine at, is it 7,990 Rand? Is that a bottle?
Yes, per bottle. That's the Vega Sicilia Unico, and it is known to be the greatest Spanish wine in the world. And we have a couple of vintages of that, and we have many wines from their range also. We don't import all the wines that we carry. We can buy single bottles from the actual importers, which is great. We can buy sprinkling from everywhere. Bordeaux, we have chateau bottled wines from the left and the right bank, classified growths. We've got single crus from Barolo and Barbaresco, from Angelo Gaia and Vietti, Sandroni. We've got all the big names. We've got Whispering Angel, the most famous rosé in the world. So if somebody who's living in France and lies on the beach on the Côte d'Azur and is used to drinking Whispering Angel at lunchtime, we've got that for them. We've also got Domaine Hot, Chateau Romosan, Chateau de Sel, incredible rosés from Provence and Bandol. So, you know, if you love wine, you can't stop yourself buying.
Indeed. And I just want to share that for any wine students, Caroline's is often referred to by lecturers and academics as the place to buy wines from around the world, so as to develop your palate. And a visit to your Strand Street offered something of for me, a tour of France. And I was wondering, having a look at the selection that you had there, how much traveling have you had to do to garner insights into the wines of the world? So maybe let's chat a little bit more about you personally and your journey in wine, Caroline. Let's start with how did your journey begin?
Look, we've only got half an hour, and I sold my first bottle of wine 42 years ago. That was working in a hotel. But so I'll just keep it very brief, Guy. When I came out of school and had done a secretarial course, as most young ladies did in those days, I think it was 1976 or 7, I was reading through a Garden and Home magazine, and I saw a double-page article on the beautiful Lanzerac Hotel. And I wasn't very happy living in Johannesburg, having come from a boarding school in the Northern Transvaal, which I absolutely loved. I was so sad to leave it. So I wrote to them and I said, do you have a job for me? And the manager wrote back in an envelope with a stamp. Remember that?
Yes.
And he said, if you're prepared to pay for your own airfare or to get down here for an interview, we'll interview you as a receptionist. And I got an early 21st birthday present from my grandfather. So I flew down, got the job, went back home, came down on the Trans-Karoo with my little mini station wagon on the back carriage or cargo, whatever, and came down, and I worked at the Lanzerac for 2 years. And in those days, we always had the swallows coming out from England, and they used to come out for 4 or 5 months, the whole summer. One old lady, Mrs. English, used to ship out her Rolls Royce ahead of her arrival.
Very nice, as you do.
Yes, yes. And so I got to meet all these people, but a lot of them didn't have transport, to drive around. So I used to take them to Delheim and Simonshig in my little Mini, and to Franschhoek for lunch, and things like that on the old road. And I started to have more of an international set of mind. And I fell in love with wine, visiting the wine estates then, and I met a wonderful woman called Phyllis Hands. She started the Cape Wine Academy with Dave Hughes, and I immediately got into, she used to have the supper club on a Sunday night at the Lanzerac in the old bar at the back, and she used to let me help her, but then sit in on the tastings. And my knowledge just went stronger and stronger. And when I left there, I went back to Johannesburg and I got into waitressing. And then I started learning Italian and French because I thought I should really get some formal education. I did that through UNISA, and I'm still studying it. And it's held me in good stead when I visit the wineries overseas, because most of the people who work in the cellars and the vineyards can't speak English very well. So that's been a very good plus. And then after that, shall I tell you what happened after that?
Yes, I'm fascinated. Go ahead. Yes.
Then because I'd worked in Stellenbosch, there was a restaurateur in Brixton at the Brixton Tower restaurant, Kurt Amann, who had a very, very fine restaurant, brilliant food. He loved wine. He had a great wine list. And he thought that I should be quite knowledgeable, which I wasn't really yet. But I joined his restaurant, stayed there for a year or so. And then I went to the Three Ships at the 5-star Carlton Hotel. And that's where I really, really learned a lot. Because all my colleagues were from European hotel schools, and they were doing their practical around the world as they do. And we had to really buckle up and just be on point. I was nervous every single day that I worked there, because we were not trained on their level, but I learned a lot from them, and that was the beginning of my journey, really. And then I went to I worked in a big retailer in Bedford View for 6 years as a wine consultant. And in the end, I became the buyer for them. And then I got a job at Baton Verwachting as PRO in 1985. And then went to La Motte as PRO and sales manager from 91 to 94. And then I decided retail was what excited me most. And then I set about trying to open up my own wine shop with no money.
Of course. Of course. I mean, you wouldn't do it with money, would you?
No. I still got no money, but our lifestyle is what rich people spend all their money on. So I'm happy.
Yeah. Fantastic. And really fascinating journey as well. Interesting to hear how you ended up going back to Gauteng, the place that you'd wanted to leave to come here, but things just went in circles by the sounds of it.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, in terms of the knowledge that you've gained, it sounds very practical, very hands-on, very much through practical experience. Do you think it's necessary for people to study wine academically in order to become as well-versed as you are?
Yes, it's absolutely necessary. I started my Cape Wine Academy, I think, in 1980. And you need to know the fundamentals of the plantings around the world in order to hook on all the rest of the information that you learn in the practical arena. So, for example, you need to know that Chardonnay is white Burgundy, or white Burgundy is Chardonnay, red Burgundy is Pinot Noir, Rioja is mainly Tempranillo, because in Europe they only plant what the Department of Agriculture and the government tell them are the right varieties to plant there. In our country and in most of the New World, we can plant anything we like anywhere as long as it's certified material. So in Bordeaux on the left bank, it will always be Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, and less of Petit Verdot and Malbec. On the right bank, because of the soils and the climate, the fact that Cabernet Sauvignon doesn't ripen fully there and doesn't perform as well as Merlot, which ripens earlier, they don't plant much. So you need to know your soils, your mesoclimates, and the plantings. And that you can only really study. And you've got to get it in your head, and then you can build your knowledge. Without that, you're not going to remember much, I don't think.
No, I'm testament to that. I've done a few courses and I have to keep going back to remind myself what I studied because the wine overtakes me.
It's not a lot to remember. So if anyone's listening who's an aspirant Master of Wine or WSET student, it's not a lot to remember. So just the basics.
And I used to get teased a lot by former colleagues because my memory was so shocking. But if I can remember it, you too can. In terms of the travel that you used to do, we were talking about that a little bit earlier on, or I touched on that. Pre-COVID, how often did you go to Europe on wine business?
We have been importing Italian wine ever since we opened our very first store. And I've been going to Italy every second year. I would have gone every year if I could afford the time and financially, but I get invited to Vin Italy as a buyer. It's a trade-only show, and it's about 20 rugby fields in size. You can walk about 8 to 10 kilometers a day in your meanderings from booth to booth, tasting. It's one of the most incredible shows ever. And most of my buying was done there. And then what I would do afterwards is go to a region in Italy that I had never been to. So I would just jump on a train and go up to Friuli, for example, which is quite close to Verona, where Vin Italy is held, and then go and do that whole region and have appointments beforehand, etc. The one year I went to Piedmont because I wanted to visit more growers. And I had 5 days with a gentleman called David Berry Green, who's an Italian wine specialist from the UK. He's now living in Barolo. And we had 4 appointments a day for 5 days.
Wow.
It was amazing. It was possible because a lot of those growers only make 2 or 3 wines. So you can do it. And that was just mind-blowing. I think you wanted to ask me what was my best wine tasting experience.
Yes.
That was one of 2.
Okay.
But that was a long week's experience, but I'll never forget it.
In terms of it sounds like you have a particular penchant for Italian and French wine. Would that be a fair assessment, given your taste for world wines? Would you say those 2 are?
Yes, I have to admit.
Okay. And then in terms of South African wine, what are some of the varietals that you've tasted that you recommend we invest in?
You mean for the collector who may want to sell later on?
Yes. Yes.
Or investing in pleasure.
I've got a couple of bottles of Paul Sauer in the fridge here, the 2015. So I'm hoping they'll be worth something in the near future.
Yes.
But yeah.
I think one should go for brands rather than varietals, possibly.
Okay. Okay.
And I would say Canon Corp. Mearlist still holds sway in the auction rooms. De Trafford, Keat,
and more.
Shiraz, Bukenoot's Kloof, his Cabernets and his Shirazes.
In terms of investment, I suppose for future enjoyment, where would you say? You'd say Shiraz and Cab Savs are the 2 that you would.
I love the Bordeaux blends first because the winemaker has more to play with to perfect his blend, his final wine. 100% cabs can be brilliant and usually are, but if you can't blend in a little bit of something, look, they can blend in up to 15% of another variety and still call it a single variety, like Cabernet. So they can squeeze in a bit of Merlot and a bit of Petit Verdot if they want, or Shiraz even, and make a beautiful wine. So I would go Cabernet Sauvignon, Bordeaux blends, and Shiraz. I do think that Cabernet Franc is a very interesting wine on its own, but I like it better when it's forming part of a blend.
Blended, yeah. Some would say that there's a worldwide move to lighter reds. What do you think about that? Is that true, do you think?
There are trends. Pinot Noir is very trendy at the moment. I think the producers are pushing their prices up a little bit high, but I'm not sure of the arithmetics and logistics involved there with yield and cost to produce and all that. But and then Cinsault is very popular, but customers seem to have got a bit bored with it now. Our customers anyway, but they'll still buy it for a nice summer drink, so like an alfresco lunch drink. But what I can say is that people are not wanting wines with 14.5% alcohol plus. The closer to 13.5, the better, especially the foreigners. They even think 13 is quite hefty. And we are importing Petit Chateau from Bordeaux, you know, wines that sell for about $3.50 and less. Really good terroir growths, and most of those are about 12.5%.
So it can be done, and it's obviously something for our wineries to look at and to evaluate. And we don't have to go too far the other way and do 0.1% or any like those.
Oh, I think we have a 0.5% tolerance.
Yeah. There's some new non-alcoholic wines that are being introduced to the market that I've tasted, and just not such a big fan, if I'm honest. Hey, anyway, Caroline, I've got some quick fire questions for you that you can just fire off the first word that comes to mind or the first thoughts, and I'll give you the opportunity to answer for red and white in this particular question. What's your favorite variety to drink? Horrible question. I know it's like asking who's your favorite child, but it's got to be done.
Sauvignon Blanc with it must have some Semillon in the blend.
Okay.
And then red wise, Cabernet.
Cabernet. So the hat has been hung on Cabernet and Sauvignon Blanc Semillon blend. Okay, got it. Pasta, because we know you love Italy, or Bobotti?
Pasta better, because Bobotti for me has too much sweetness from the sultanas and the apricot jam, and I think that sweetness fights with your wine. It spoils the wine completely.
That's very interesting. I must share that with somebody that knows you very well. Peter Charalambidis, my former landlord, told me that you make an awesome Bobotti. So I'm gonna have to share what you just said with him.
Well, the thing is, Peter doesn't drink wine, so there was no problem there.
Shame, it was just Edna that was having to struggle her way through. Glassware, stemless or no thanks, I'll sip out of a can?
I hate both. I don't like stemless glasses, and because the bowl gets grubby, and I like my glass to be spotless.
Yes.
And I like to hold them on a stem, and even beer needs to be poured out of its can into a lovely glass.
Indeed. There we go. We agree. And that'll be the end of any sampling of canned wine that I get for the rest of my life. But there we go. So, most memorable wine tasting experience. You mentioned one, but it sounds like there's another one that you have hidden in the bag.
Yes, it just springs to mind. In about 1984, I booked into a little 2-star, might even have been a 1-star hotel in Bordeaux on a street which was populated by ladies of the night, all night, and little restaurants with people sitting eating coquillage, I think it's called, little fish in shells off those tiers of iced, you know, those lovely things sitting on the pavement. And it was right near the Bourse in Bordeaux and right near the harbor. And I booked in there for 2 weeks, and every day I had appointments, and I went to the different appellations of the left bank, and I went to visit Chateau Figeac. And lo and behold, I was received by the owner and his wife, and they were of a certain age. They were absolutely welcoming to this young girl of no real value to them in terms of huge export orders or anything, but they treated me like part of the family. They gave me an hour and a half of their time. And in many chateaus in Bordeaux, they will just draw samples out of a barrel for you to taste. They hardly ever open a bottle unless you are important. And they opened 3 half bottles of Chateau Figeac, 1979, 1978, 79, and 80 for me. Wow. And they tasted and explained everything about the estate, the domain.
That's incredible. And of course, were you already able to speak French at that stage? So that was something that was...
Yes, it wasn't perfect, but I think it was quite charming.
And good enough for you to get through. Wow. It just shows you, hey, when we learn another language, we can bond with another culture, and that's when we get all the spoils. That's a nice treat. Sure.
Exactly.
Well, it's been wonderful chatting, Caroline. And just if you fancy your luck, then answer the easy question here on the Via the Grapevine page, and you could win a magnum of La Motte 2017 Syrah Viognier, the Pierneef collection, as well as a wine decanter. This prize is worth almost 2,000 Rand, sponsored by Caroline very kindly. So head across to the Via the Grapevine Facebook page for an opportunity to enter that competition. And yes, to the doyen of wine sales in South Africa, Caroline Rillemer of Caroline's Fine Wine Cellar. Thank you for your time today.
Pleasure, Guy.
And I wish you a vibrant and prosperous future with the new site in Sea Point.
Thank you very much.